Hey everyone, welcome back to Sgcarmart. So I'm here in Tenerife in the Canary Islands for the international media drive of the brand new Audi A6 e-tron. And while the A6 nameplate may sound familiar, this isn't simply Audi's long-standing executive four-door sedan gone electric. Although it may occupy a similar market segment, this new Audi A6 e-tron family is built on an all-new electric platform. So let's take a closer look. This car's design is decidedly purposeful. Its shapes are meant to make it very aerodynamically efficient, and in fact this car has the lowest drag coefficient of any car Audi has ever produced, right? 0.21, and actually, fun fact, that's actually the lowest figure in the entire VW group. Now, if we look at some of the details on this car's design, first thing you probably note is this grille, right? Or grille because it's an electric car. It's body colored, which is a little bit unconventional for Audi, and in fact what they have done is to invert the color, so this entire what they call dark face of the car is then really blacked out, and you have some interesting details like these split headlights. So again, fun fact, these are not the headlights, these are the DRLs, those are the headlights, and these actually have a whole bunch of customizability to them, so that's very interesting. And you're gonna have all your ADAS cameras all hidden in there. Now it is here on the side profile of the car that things get quite interesting. So the most notable thing you'll see is this insert over here, this black insert. And yes, it's quite an interesting styling decision, but perhaps more interesting is the fact that this is the PPE platform, but this is the first application that Audi is using on what is called a low floor concept. So essentially it's a low slung electric vehicle, and this is basically where the battery is inside the car. So it has quite a technical function just to show you where the battery is, but I think it looks great, I think it looks purposeful, I think it looks athletic, but I also like the fact that it does not shy away from this car's electric nature. And if we sort of zoom out slightly and look at the overall silhouette of the car, it's quite a wedge-shaped car, not quite your typical four-door sedan. It's a little bit sort of raised up a little bit more over here, but overall I think it's a good-looking car, and we have nice flush door handles, well, almost flush door handles as well, and these are soft close doors. One thing to point out, interestingly, charging port over here. If we go over to the other side of the car, you'll see that there's also another charging port over there, and I think that's a smart and interesting and good choice because that actually expands your charging options. You don't have to worry about, hey, can I reverse my car in this lot because the charger is on the other side. And now if we go check out the rear of the car, first thing you notice are these illuminated Audi rings. They are red just like the tail lights. And think about these tail lights, these are the second generation digital OLED lights. They have 8 light signatures, so you can configure them from inside the car, and it also can do something called car-to-X communication. So Audi says it can do things like warn people if they're too close to you, if there's some kind of emergency situation going on. Now, let's check out the boot. This liftback opens up to a very generous 502-litre boot, and that's already big enough, but if you need even more space, you can knock down the rear seats, and that expands to 1,330 litres. So that's a look at the A6 e-tron from the outside. Now let's jump inside the car. Alright, so I'm now here in the rear of the A6 e-tron, and let's first talk about space, right? So this is an all-electric architecture, so you expect there to be quite a lot of space, and that's probably true. You know, there's good amount of legroom over here. I'm 1.71 tall, and headroom it's alright, it's not great, but again, this is a sportback, it's a sloping roofline, and it's very comfortable. And of course, this being an electric car, you have an, well, almost flat floor here in the middle. So if I slide onto the middle seat, nice and comfortable, I can put my feet up. And yes, there's a little bit of a hump over here, but I think this is what you expect from an executive sedan in terms of space. Now, equipment, we have rear aircon vents and rear aircon controls, and actually heated rear seats as well. Obviously not going to be very relevant in Singapore. Aircon vents on the side as well. So, you know, rear passengers are going to be very comfortable. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that this A6 e-tron is offered with the option of a leather-free interior. So this particular test car has that option. So you have fabric all around, and honestly, it feels nice. It feels premium. It feels expensive. Whether or not Singapore will get that, our understanding is unlikely because, you know, Singapore's a little bit more of a traditional market, so you probably will expect the standard leather interior. So that's the back of the car, perhaps quite standard fare as you would expect. Let's go jump in the front and see what has changed. Now here in the front, this is the new generation Audi cabin. So actually it was first debuted in the Q6 e-tron, right? So what's new? We have this new MMI panoramic display, so it's a little bit curved, and you have an 11.9 driver's display over here, a 14.5 10.9-inch infotainment screen over here, and then here we have an optional passenger side display that's 10.9 inches. Now let's quickly talk about the infotainment system first and foremost. So this runs an Android Automotive OS, so that's a departure from the sort of previous Audi OS, right? And let's be honest, it's a lot of new features. Do I particularly like it? I don't know yet. I'll probably have to spend a little bit more time to play around with it. I personally really like the old Audi system just because it was super simple. Sort of 8 tablets and like 2 maximum menus. Here you're gonna have all kinds of additional features, right? So beyond your music, your maps, all kinds of settings, this also has an improved Audi assistant, so there's a lot more natural language capabilities when it comes to voice control. This even integrates ChatGPT. How much are you going to actually use that? I don't know, but you know, spend some time to play around with it and see. And of course, we have a fully digital cluster over here. Now, if we move down slightly to the steering wheel, interesting that we have these new controls, right? So they are both capacitive and non-capacitive. I don't really know how to explain, but basically they are capacitive in the sense that you can slide over them to pick the different functions, but I do like that there are actual button presses to be had. So this is honestly an improvement. I like this system. Is it the best? I don't know, but I think it's an improvement. You know how people have been making a lot of noise about capacitive control, so I think this is a better system overall. And now if we slide on over to the left, and this kind of startled me a little bit when I first saw it. So we have a lot of controls over on this panel over here. So beyond your window controls, you have your light controls, your locks, your seat settings, etc, and that's all housed over here. The rest of the cabin is quite standard Audi fare as you expect, right? So luckily we do have manual aircon vents, but other than that, it's a classy cabin. It feels premium, it looks nice, and it looks expensive. Other equipment you get, you have a 20 speaker B&O system, you have your standards of you know, charging ports over here. Yeah, pretty much a classy standard Audi cabin, and I must say, at least on first impressions, I'm enjoying it quite a lot. Now, I've quickly just jumped into a different car just to show you 2 options that are available. So the first is the virtual exterior mirrors. These are the 2nd generation ones, and 2 big changes, right? The first is that the mirrors fold when you lock the car. Not perhaps that important, but more importantly is the location of the screen. So if you remember in the old e-tron, the screen was somewhere over here, so that's not really in your eye line. So this new one is definitely more where you would look if you were looking at standard mirrors, and I think it's a lot better. It's a lot more visually ergonomic in that sense, and you can still, you know, do your little adjustments over here. The second option available is this. So this is a panoramic sunroof, but this has adjustable transparency, and it's quite an interesting approach, right? So for example, if I just click this button, you can see that it kind of swaps between this kind of zebra pattern. However, if you want your standards of opening, this opens everything, and quite cool effect actually. If you close it, it actually slowly closes like it would a normal physical sunshade. Again, how useful, I don't know, but it's a cool little touch. Now, all that's said and done now, I think most importantly, let's go drive this car and see how this new A6 e-tron Sportback performs on the road. Alright, so I'm now driving the A6 e-tron Sportback, and first thing I do want to point out is that this particular car that I'm driving is the performance variant. So this has 270 kilowatts of power and over 500 Newton meters of torque. This is not going to be the model that Singapore is getting, right? Singapore is getting the base variant, so that has 210 kilowatts and slightly less torque. Perhaps the more relevant difference is that this one has a 100 kilowatt hour battery with a range rating of over 700 km. The sort of entry-level one that Singapore is getting has a slightly smaller battery, and that's going to give you above 600 km in terms of range. Now again, I think 600 km is a very reasonable number, right? I think that's actually on the high side for a contemporary EV. So how does this feel on the road? It's actually very easy to drive, surprisingly. The steering is very light. The car is not light, the car is like 2.1 tons. Do you feel its weight? Yes, you do, especially in some of the quicker corners. You do feel like you need to manage your entry speed a little bit. But beyond that, I found that it's quite easy to drive. run it around a few corners and it steers nicely. This is a single motor setup, so it's rear-wheel drive. It feels sort of agile enough. Again, fundamentally, this is still a 2.1 ton executive sedan, so don't expect wonders. It's not a sports car. Now, this also has adaptive suspension, so that is going to be a cost option, obviously. With the adaptive suspension, you get a bit of adjustability, right, in terms of your ride firmness. It's obviously a lot more comfortable. Now, the interesting thing about this adaptive suspension also is that it can then adjust the ride height. So in the efficiency mode, so that one of the drive modes available, it will actually lower the car by up to 20 mm to make it even more efficient, right? And again, efficiency is the name of the game. This car wants to be as aerodynamic as possible. Now, obviously, we also want to talk about some of its charging capabilities. This car uses an 800-volt architecture and supports up to 270 kilowatts of DC fast charging. Audi says that this car can go from 10 to 80% in 21 minutes. Fast charging is available. Do we have 270 kilowatts chargers in Singapore? No, not really, not many. Rest be assured that this car is definitely in some ways quite future-proof. One interesting thing that I do want to talk about is the new or upgraded augmented reality HUD. So obviously not really going to be able to see it because I'm the one seeing it, but basically what happens is that it projects stuff on the road and in front of you. So with this current generation one, Audi has further expanded the field of view and there's some more data being shown. It will show you obviously so how far away your next turn is, where you're supposed to turn, right? So that's all your sort of standard HUD stuff. The cool stuff is that also it projects sort of ahead of you where you're supposed to turn, how you're supposed to turn. And because we have the navigation set up with certain markers along the way, one actually quite neat touch is that, you know, with the markers, they are like flags, right? It actually projects the flag like sort of on the road, so you're like chasing the flag. So that's quite a nice little touch. This car has optional adaptive air suspension that clearly helps with the overall comfort, but generally I think it's a very comfortable car. It's very quiet. There's no sort of artificial noise going on in any way, and road noise in any significant way, and generally it's very calm driving experience, so I like that. I also like that the steering is quite light, feels very maneuverable for a 2.1 ton, almost 5 meter long car. This is a single motor rear-wheel drive, so there is a little bit more sort of sharpness to the nose of the car, but again, this isn't a performance car. What it's trying to be is a comfortable cruiser, and it's very capable in doing that. I'm now driving the A6 e-tron Sportback. As the name would suggest, this is the more powerful model. So this one has an electric motor at the front. So we have a total of 370 kilowatts of power and somewhere in the region of 800 Newton meters of torque. And it's honestly very, very quick. So if I just round this corner, yeah, that's insane. And obviously with an all-wheel drive system, you're gonna get lots and lots of traction, especially out of corners, right? So if I just turn in and I get early on the power, yeah, you know, it's very, very capable as far as the handling is concerned. Obviously, speed in a straight line is a big distinguishing factor between this and the A6. I would say that the other one is the fact that because this is all-wheel drive, while you get the additional traction, I do find that the A6 is a little bit more responsive on the front end. Obviously, that's a rear-wheel drive setup, right? So it definitely does feel a little bit different. But beyond that, I think the cars are very similar. You know, the mechanical setup is pretty much the same. This also has the air suspension. You know, we have this more or less the same steering rack. It's still quite a light rack, quite a quick rack. I like it about that. The one thing that I think it's hard to kind of run away from is the fact that with the bigger battery, so this has the 100 kilowatt hour battery and the two motors, this car is quite a bit heavier. It's about 200 kgs heavier than the A6 e-tron Sportback. And is that weight penalty worth it? That's a difficult question to answer because beyond the sort of additional straight line pace and perhaps, you know, the traction around corners, you do feel that extra weight, right? You know, around corners, this car leads a little bit more. When you're braking, you have to brake a little bit harder, and it's a lot of performance that I don't think a lot of people are necessarily going to use all the time. So then there's the question of why have the A6, right? So relative to the car I drove yesterday, which was the A6 e-tron Performance, pretty much spec'd out exactly like this car. I don't know, I'm struggling to find that much of a difference just beyond the straight line speed. It's honestly a real good sort of GT car, right? You know, it's lots of performance on tap, but it's very, very smooth, very comfortable. I mean, again, the roads here are fantastically smooth, so I'm not really dealing with many bumps. Is there a little bit of body roll? There is, and honestly, I think that's a good thing because I don't want a car like this to be overly harsh and overly hard, right? So even if, let's say, I toggle this into the dynamic setting where it lowers the ride height and firms up the dampers a little bit, I mean, yes, immediately you can feel that's a little bit stiffer, but it's still not harsh in any way. You know, steering's still relatively on the light side. It's a, you know, high performance, sort of premium electric executive sedan, and that's exactly what it is. I think there is a case to be made for the A6. It's not going to be for everyone. I think definitely and understandably the A6 is going to be the obvious mass choice. So the A6 is going to be a bit of a niche option, but I do think it's quite well executed. Alright, so some concluding thoughts about the A6 e-tron. So just to clarify, Singapore we are getting only the Sportback, we're not getting the Avance unfortunately, so that's a little bit of a boo. I like Avance, but obviously it's a case of what the market demands, and Singaporeans are not that big into wagons, so we're only getting the Sportbacks. Admittedly, we have to be honest, right? When you look at some of Audi's obvious German competitors, the brand is perhaps a little bit late to the electric executive sedan segment. We have the BMW i5 and then you have the Mercedes EQE sedan. Those are the two obvious occupants in this segment. So yes, this car's a little bit late to the game. The overall feeling is going to be fundamentally relatively similar, right? I mean, these are all electric cars built on electric platforms. So I think the success of the A6 e-tron will probably come down a lot to its price as well. So we don't know quite yet. Audi Singapore is not officially saying. My guess is that it probably needs to come in at your sort of low 300s, so maybe 320, 330 to make it really competitive, right? Price competitive with the i5 and the EQE. Their respective base variants are asking for about 390,000 at our current COE climate. If so, people are going to take a good hard look at this car because I think it delivers everything you want from a car in this particular segment. And yeah, let's see how buyers in Singapore will take to the car. So in terms of when will it be coming to Singapore, our understanding is that it's slated to be launched sometime in the middle of 2025, and both the A6 e-tron and the S6 should arrive more or less at the same time. So yes, that's our time here in Tenerife driving the new A6 e-tron Sportback as well as the S6 e-tron Sportback. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and do remember to like, share and subscribe to our channel, and of course hit the notification bell so you will be alerted of all our upcoming videos. And you can also check us out on TikTok at Sgcarmart. So that's my time here in Spain done. I'll see you back home. Bye!